Part 1, the twin parable. Two boys grew up in the same house. Not the same neighborhood, the same house. They were brothers, 18 months apart, raised by the same two parents on the same modest income. They ate the same dinners, sat at the same kitchen table, doing the same homework under the same lamp. They scored within 40 points of each other on the same college entrance exam. Their teachers wrote almost identical comments on their report cards. Bright, capable, a little restless. At 18, if you had lined them up and asked a room full of strangers to bet on which brother would end up wealthier, the room would have split down the middle. There was nothing to separate them. Now walk forward with me to the year they both turned 50. The first brother drives to an office he does not own, in a car he is still financing, to a job he is quietly afraid of losing. He has a framed diploma on the wall of a study he refinanced the house to build. He earns a respectable salary, and almost all of it is already spoken for before it arrives. The mortgage, the second mortgage, the student loans. He is somehow still paying 2 decades later. The loans he has now co-signed for his own children. When a headhunter calls, he does not feel excited. He feels the cold flush of someone who knows how replaceable he is. The second brother is on a call from a kitchen in a house that is paid for. He never finished the degree he started. He spends about 3 hours that morning doing work that 4 different companies are paying him for, and he turns down a 5th because he would rather take his daughter to lunch. He has no boss. He has clients, and if one of them disappeared tomorrow, it would be an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. He does not check the price of anything. Same house, same parents, same intelligence, same starting line, radically different lives. And here is the part that should stop you cold. The difference between these two brothers was not luck. It was not talent. It was not who married better or who caught a lucky break. The difference was a single, quiet decision each of them made in their early 20s about what to spend the next 10 years becoming good at. One brother spent that decade acquiring credentials. The other spent it acquiring capabilities. And the market, which does not care what your certificate says, paid them accordingly every year for 30 years with interest. Part 2, the thesis plus promise. Here is the claim, stated as plainly as I can state it. The single most valuable financial asset an ordinary person can own is not a degree, not a job title, and not even a paid-off house. It is a high-income skill, a specific market-facing capability that other people will pay you directly to deploy. And it is not close. Not because degrees are worthless. A degree can be genuinely useful. But because a degree and a skill are 2 completely different kinds of thing, and almost no one is told the difference until it is far too late to act on it, a degree is a permission slip. It is a one-time signal that says, somebody vetted me. A skill is a machine. It produces value every time you turn it on. It gets better the more you run it. And unlike a diploma, the market reprices it in your favor every single year that you keep sharpening it. Most people spend their most valuable decade paying for the permission slip and neglecting the machine. Then they spend the next 30 years wondering why the permission slip stopped opening doors. Today I'm going to show you exactly why skills out-earn credentials by margins most people would find hard to believe. I'm going to show you the specific high-income skills that do this and the decisions that separate the people who build them from the people who don't. And I'm going to show you what you can do about it starting right now, regardless of your current age, whether you're 18 and choosing a path, 45 and feeling stuck, or well past the point where anyone told you it was still possible. Because it is still possible. The mechanism does not check your age. Let me show you how it works. Part 3, the mechanism, 3 forces. Why does a skill out-earn a credential by so much? Not by a little, by multiples. The answer is 3 forces. And they don't act separately. They stack. The first force is direct value capture. A salaried employee is paid a fixed price for their time, and the value they create flows upward to the person who owns the business. If you generate $2 million of new revenue for your company this year, you do not get $2 million. You get your salary and maybe a bonus that is a rounding error against what you produced. That gap between what you create and what you keep is the tax you pay for being a credential holder inside someone else's machine. A high-income skill closes that gap. When you can directly produce a result, the market wants a sale, a piece of persuasive writing, a working system, a closed deal you can capture, a far larger share of the value you create, because you are no longer selling your hours, you are selling the outcome. The second force is compounding, and this is the mathematical heart of everything. A degree is a depreciating asset. The day you receive it, it begins losing relevance, because knowledge ages and the specific things you memorized get further from the frontier every year. A skill does the opposite. A skill appreciates. Every project you complete makes the next one faster and better. Every client makes the next client easier to win. Reputation compounds on top of ability, and referrals compound on top of reputation. 10 years of deliberately practiced skill is not 10 times more valuable than 1 year. It is 30, 40, 50 times more valuable, because the improvements build on each other. The credential holder's value line is flat and slowly sloping down. The skill builder's value line curves upward and keeps steepening. The third force is optionality, the value of scarcity and choice. When you hold only a credential, you are one of thousands of people holding the identical credential, competing for a finite number of chairs. Your negotiating power is close to zero because you are interchangeable. When you hold a genuine skill, you become scarce. Scarcity gives you options, multiple clients, multiple offers, the ability to walk away, and options are what lets you name your price instead of accepting the one you're handed. Optionality is the difference between an income you defend and an income you dictate. Now watch what happens when you stack them. Direct value capture means you keep more of what you make. Compounding means what you make grows on a curve instead of a line. Optionality means you get to charge what you're worth instead of what you're offered. These three forces don't add together. They multiply together. And that multiplication is the entire reason two people with identical intelligence can end up an ocean apart. The person who captures this stack builds real, durable wealth. The person who misses it runs on a treadmill for 40 years, moving fast, working hard, and arriving almost nowhere. Part 4, the math made visible. Let me pull this out of the abstract and put it into numbers, because the numbers are where this stops being an opinion. Take two 22-year-olds, same starting point, same raw ability. Call them the credential path and the skill path. The credential path spends 4 to 6 years in, let's say, $80,000, much of it borrowed, acquiring a respectable degree and then a respectable job. They start at $55,000 a year. They are diligent. They get the standard raises, roughly 3% a year, plus the occasional promotion. Over a 40-year career, that path might average somewhere around $80,000 a year across the whole span. Lifetime earnings, call it a little over $3 million before you subtract the debt, the interest, and the years spent not earning while studying. Now, the skill path. This person spends the same first 2 years learning a high-income skill, instead persuasive writing or sales or building software or closing deals. They earn very little at first. Maybe they even earn less than the credential holder for the first 3 or 4 years. This is the part that scares people off, and it's exactly where the divergence is born. Because in year 1, they're worth almost nothing at the skill, and in year 5, they're competent, and in year 10, they're genuinely good. And genuinely good at a high-income skill is not worth $80,000 a year. It's worth $150, then $200, then more, because they're now capturing value directly and charging on optionality. Run that curve out, and the skill path doesn't earn $3 million over a career. It earns 6, 8, sometimes well past 10. Look at the single number that matters. At the 20-year mark, the credential holder has earned maybe $1.6 million and is still trading hours for a capped salary. The skill builder, who started slower, has by then crossed into charging on results and is often earning in a year what the credential holder earns in 3. The gap at retirement isn't a few $100,000. It's frequently more than $4 million, and the entire gap was authored by which one they chose to build in their 20s. Here's the analogy that makes it physical. Imagine 2 people cutting down trees. The first one grabs an axe and starts swinging on day 1. He's ahead all morning. The second one spends the whole first hour doing nothing but sharpening. The first man is winning, and he feels like he's winning right up until the moment the sharpened axe passes him and never looks back. The credential is showing up on day 1 with a dull axe and swinging harder. The skill is the sharpened blade. Effort feels like the thing that matters. It isn't. Leverage is. And notice the cruel little twist buried in that math. The decade you spend building the skill creates a lead that no amount of later effort can close. The credential holder can work overtime, take the night classes, grind twice as hard at 50 and still never catch the curve, because you cannot outwork a compounding advantage that got a 20-year head start. The years once spent do not come back. Part 5, the 5 skills that actually pay. So which skills are we talking about? Because not every skill is a high-income skill. Learning to play guitar is a skill. The market will not make you wealthy for it. A high-income skill has a specific signature. Someone with money has an urgent problem, and your skill solves it in a way they can measure. There are 5 arenas where this is most true, and the outcome of a life is largely decided by whether a person builds any of them. The first is the ability to sell. Here's the temptation: to believe that selling is beneath you, or sleazy, or something other pushier people do. And that instinct is understandable. Most of us have been sold to badly, and it left a bad taste. But refusing to learn to sell is one of the most expensive decisions a person can make, and they never see the bill. Because the person who can take a good idea or a good product and move it into another person's hands is the person every business on earth needs and will overpay for. You think the cost of avoiding sales is just, I'm not comfortable with it. The real cost is a lifetime spent depending on other people to sell your worth for you, including at every salary negotiation you'll ever lose. The person who can sell can write their own income anywhere, in any economy, forever. Because a business with no revenue is a hobby, and revenue is what sellers make. The second is the ability to write in a way that moves people to act. The temptation is to think writing is a soft skill, a nice to have, something for English majors and not for serious earners. That feels reasonable in a world of video and voice notes. But persuasive writing, copywriting, the words on the page that make a stranger take out their card and buy, is one of the most directly monetizable skills that exists, because it works while you sleep and it scales to millions of readers at zero extra cost. You think you're skipping just some writing. You're actually skipping the one skill that lets a single afternoon of your effort keep earning for years. The person who can write words that sell can turn a blank document into an asset that pays rent indefinitely. The third is the ability to build the thing itself, technical skill. The temptation here is intimidation. I'm not a math person. I could never learn to code or build. So people route around it and stay on the side of the ledger that only uses what others built. The validation is real. Building things is genuinely hard at first. But the hidden cost is enormous. Because the person who can build software, systems, or products that people need is not paid for their time. They're paid for the leverage of something that serves thousands of people at once. You think the cost of not learning to build is, I'll just hire it out. The real cost is that you will forever be a tenant in other people's creations instead of a landlord in your own. The builder owns the machine that everyone else has to rent. The fourth is the ability to negotiate. The temptation is to treat negotiation as confrontation, to accept the first number to avoid the discomfort of asking for more. Nearly everyone does this, and it feels like politeness. It is the single most expensive politeness of your life. A $15,000 difference in your salary, negotiated once at 30, isn't $15,000 invested and compounded across a career. It's several $100,000 of your retirement surrendered in a 2-minute conversation you were afraid to have. You think you're avoiding an awkward moment. You're actually handing away a house. The person who can negotiate keeps money that the person who can't never even realizes was theirs to keep. And the fifth is the ability to lead and multiply other people. This is the highest order skill, and the temptation is to avoid it because managing people is messy and thankless. So the capable individual stays an individual contributor, capped forever at the value of their own 2 hands. The hidden cost is a ceiling, because the market pays the most by an enormous margin to the person who can take 5, 10, 50 other capable people and make them collectively worth more than the sum of their parts. You think the cost of avoiding leadership is a quieter, simpler life. The real cost is that your income is permanently limited to what one human body can personally produce. The person who can lead escapes the trade of hours for dollars entirely because they are now paid on the output of a team, not a torso. Any one of these 5, taken seriously for a few years, changes the trajectory of a life. Most people build zero of them, spend their 20s collecting a credential instead, and never understand why the credentials stop being enough. Part 6.2 case studies. Let me make this concrete with two real-shaped lives. Marcus and Devin grew up 4 blocks apart. Same public high school, same graduating year. Marcus scored slightly higher on his entrance exams. Both came from working families with modest savings. Both were told the same thing by every adult they trusted. Go get the degree, get the good job, and you'll be set. Marcus followed it exactly. He took on $62,000 in loans, earned a solid degree, and landed a stable corporate job at $58,000 a year. He did everything right. He showed up early, he was liked, he got his 3% raises. Every individual decision Marcus made was reasonable. The safe degree, the safe job, the safe raise. By 45, he was earning $91,000 a year and still owed $11,000 on those original loans, having paid back more than double what he borrowed in interest. When his division was restructured at 49, he discovered that 27 years of loyalty and a diploma bought him exactly 8 weeks of severance and a spot in a job market full of cheaper, younger versions of himself. He'll likely retire on Social Security in a thin 401k, and he'll run the numbers every month for the rest of his life. Devin didn't follow the script. He couldn't afford to, and honestly, he wasn't sure he wanted to. He spent his first 2 years after high school learning to write copy and to sell badly at first for almost no money, while Marcus was already drawing a real paycheck. For 3 years, Devin looked like the cautionary tale. He earned less. He had no title to tell people at reunions. He felt, in his own words, like he was swimming against the current while everyone he knew swam with it. But Devin's axe was getting sharp. By year 5, he was writing sales pages for small businesses. By year 8, he had a handful of clients paying him on results, not hours. By 45, Devin was clearing $240,000 a year working for himself, with no debt, no boss, and 4 different income sources, so that losing any one of them was survivable. He wasn't smarter than Marcus. His exam scores had been lower. The difference wasn't earned by different intelligence or different luck or a different economy. They lived through the same decades. It was earned entirely by a single decision each made at 20 about what to spend the next year's times becoming. One bought a permission slip, the other built a machine. Part 7. The psychological twist. Now here's the part almost no one expects, and it's the part I most want you to sit with. You'd assume that Marcus, the safe one, the one who followed the respectable path, at least got the security times he paid for. That's the whole trade, isn't it? You give up the higher ceiling in exchange for a floor you can stand on? Take less upside? Get more safety? Except he didn't get the safety either. The credential path felt safe. It was not safe. Marcus spent his entire career one reorganization away from disaster, utterly dependent on a single employer's decisions, with no ability to replace his income if it vanished, which it eventually did. He bought the feeling of security and received none of the substance. Meanwhile, Devin, who supposedly chose the risky path, ended up with the actual thing security is made of: multiple income streams, in-demand ability, and the power to walk away. Devin was objectively, structurally safer than the man who chose safety. That's the trap in one sentence. The credential doesn't just cost you the higher income. It costs you the higher income, and it doesn't deliver the security you gave the income up for. You pay the premium, and the insurance doesn't pay out. The safest thing you can own is not a stable job. It is a skill so valuable that you could lose everything else tomorrow and rebuild it by the end of the year. Marcus was fragile in a suit. Devin was anti-fragile in a t-shirt. The market decided which was which, and the market does not care which one felt safer at 22. Part 8, guidance by life stage. So what do you do with this? That depends entirely on where you're standing right now. Let me speak to each of you directly. If you're 18 to about 25, you've just been handed the most valuable thing in this entire seminar: foreknowledge. You still have the decade of maximum leverage completely intact. You do not have to choose between the degree and the skill, but you must refuse to let the degree be your only asset. Pick one of the 5 skills and begin building it now, in parallel, in your evenings, for real clients, however small. Graduate with a diploma in one hand and a genuine capability in the other, and you will be untouchable in a way your classmates won't understand for 20 years. If you're in the thick of it, late 20s to 40s, working, maybe with a family and a mortgage, this is the section for you. And here is the calm truth. You do not need to quit anything or blow up your life. You need to pick exactly one high-income skill and give it 5 focused hours a week. That's it. One skill, a few hours, protected and consistent. In 2 years, that side capability can match your salary. In 4, it can exceed it. You are not behind. You're standing at the trailhead with more resources than the 18-year-old ever had. If you've tried before and it didn't stick, you started the course, you bought the program, you fizzled out, understand what actually went wrong. You didn't lack discipline. You tried to build a skill in isolation with no real stakes, no client, no deadline, no one paying or waiting. Skills don't grow in a vacuum, they grow under real demand. This time, get one real, tiny paying obligation. First, one small client, one real project, and let the pressure of a promise pull the skill out of you. Behavior that failed on willpower succeeds on obligation. And if you think you're too late, you're 50, 55, 60, and a voice is telling you the ship sailed, hear this clearly. Compounding runs forward from wherever you started, not from wherever you wish you'd started it. The person who plants a tree at 60 still gets shade at 65. You have something the 22-year-old does not. Judgment, a network, and pattern recognition earned over decades. Layered onto one of these 5 skills, that experience is not a disadvantage, it's an accelerant. The only truly too late is the decision to not start because it feels too late. Part 9, the deepest obstacle plus the 2-version future. There is one obstacle underneath all the others, and it's not money, and it's not time. It's this quiet belief that the credentialed path is the responsible one, and choosing the skill is somehow reckless, unserious, a gamble. We've been taught to wait for permission, to let an institution certify us before we believe we're allowed to be valuable. And so intelligent people spend years waiting to be told they're ready, waiting for the degree, the title, the qualification waiting to be chosen when the entire time the market was standing there willing to pay them directly for a result. No permission required. You don't need to be chosen. You need to be capable. And here is the trade in one line. The discomfort of being a beginner at a real skill lasts about 2 years. The income and freedom it buys lasts the rest of your life. 2 years of feeling behind against 40 years of being ahead. That is the entire deal on the table. So let me put you inside both versions of your own future, because one of them is being chosen right now by what you do after this seminar ends. Picture yourself at 65. In the first version, you're at a kitchen table with a calculator, moving numbers between columns, deciding whether this is a month you can help your grandkids or a month you can't, aware that your entire income depends on a pension you don't control and a system you can only hope holds. You did everything you were told. You followed the respectable path, and it left you dependent. In the second version, you're at a similar table, but you're not calculating whether you can afford things. You're deciding which of the things you enjoy doing you'll keep doing because your income was never tied to a chair someone else could take away. You still have the skill. You could turn it on tomorrow if you wanted to. You are free, not because you got lucky, but because 30 years ago you spent 2 uncomfortable years building a machine instead of buying a permission slip. Both of those people had the same intelligence, the same starting line. The difference between them is a decision that is available to you today at whatever age you are, and it comes down to a single question. Are you going to keep collecting permission, or are you going to build capability? The high-income skills pay more than any degree you could ever earn. That's not a threat, and it's not a regret waiting to happen. It's an opportunity, the rare kind that doesn't care how old you are or where you've been. Read that again until it lands not as pressure, but as relief. The machine has always been available. It's still available now, and the only hand that can build it is yours.